Hello there, and welcome to yet another edition of SOHB Story, State of the Art Branding. Today we have in the house a man who wears multiple hats. Before I actually kind of articulate what those hats are, let me introduce Sumanto Chattopadhyay. Welcome to the SOHB Story podcast. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Suresh.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. I know it is Monday and it becomes difficult to kind of, especially when you're an entrepreneur. And congratulations on your new book and your authorship.
Thank you so much.
Miles to go before we sleep, but I think you made a beginning. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of doing. It takes a lot of patience, I guess, right? And you've been doing the rounds and doing signings and appearances and all that. So all the very best for it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you at the beginning itself, you are an advertising person who trespassed into language, or was it the other way around?
So I think that I've always had a passion for language from a very young age. I was always very curious about words and the way they sounded. And at a very young age, when I discovered my mother tongue is Bengali, and then the next language
Beautiful
I learned.
language.
Thank you. The next language I learned was English. And I would start wondering why certain words in both the languages and basic words like mother and mata or mum and ma, why do they sound so similar? And these are some basic examples, but there are many more. So I used to always pester my parents about it, and they bought me a dictionary. And also I was fortunate to grow up in one of those old bungalows in Kolkata, then Calcutta, where we had a room which was the library. So we had floor to ceiling books, and books never got thrown away. So these belong to my grandparents' generation, to my parents' generation. So books belonging to my uncles, then to my parents, my brothers. So I had, free reign of that place. So I remember sort of lying on the floor because we had those old red oxide floors, and I would just...
They're so cooling, isn't it?
Yeah, so cooling. And, those... the fan must have been 100 years old. So it, made this sound, which in today's language would be called ASMR. And, so I would just lie there on the floor and read. And I remember that that was also my father's study. So he would, at times, be smoking a pipe. Of course, today, you think, why is a child in the room? But I loved the smell of the pipe tobacco.
You're a by design passive smoker.
Yeah, by design. So that was a wonderful, and all of it kind of really was conducive to turn me into a reader. So that's, I think my language passion started there, and it just never ended.
Okay. Is there any particular genre that you love doing, or is it across the board in terms of the kind of books that you want to
read?
Yeah.
No, so I have primarily read fiction most of my life. I think that's definitely my first love. And I think that fiction can teach you so much about the world. One of the things that I love to do is if I'm going somewhere for a vacation, for example, I might read a book which is set in that place.
Wow.
That makes your experience of that place so much richer. And a lot of novels have so much history, so much geography. So everything that you might want to learn about a place can be found in a book of fiction. So at times it can be more instructive, or at least the lessons can penetrate and be absorbed much more easily when they come in the form of fiction. But having said that, I read all kinds of books, non-fiction as well. So in recent years, I've read more non-fiction as well. And my book, Stories of Words and Phrases, though the first word of the title is stories, it is a non-fiction book. But the thing is that the words that we use day in and day out have some fascinating stories behind them. They often meant something completely different when they started out. And also the phrases that we use. And, so many of them were invented by individuals like Shakespeare. I think we know all this because there are a lot of social media forwards, which tell you about that. But yeah, so I think everything is storytelling at the end of the day.
So true, so true. And once again, Congratulations on the new chapter in your life as an author.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We briefly discussed it, touched upon it offline. You wear multiple hats, Sumanto, right? Firstly, how do you manage that? You can tell me offline. You're an author, you're a poet, you're a mathematician, you're a ad man, you're an actor, all of that, right? I just want to understand, are these intrinsically woven in, or you actually kind of say, okay, you cannot come uninvited into this space? Which of them are not invited or uninvited, depending upon what space you're in?
Yeah. So I think that they're all aspects of the same thing. I think that at the end of the day, we are all creative individuals and storytellers. And especially in the kind of professions that I've been in, I'm definitely a storyteller. So in advertising, you're telling brand stories, not just brand stories, they are the intersection of human stories and brand stories.
Exactly.
That's how great advertising works. As an actor, you're using your acting skills to tell a story. You're a character in a story. So everything is storytelling. Our life, we are we are called Homo sapiens, but I think Homo fictus might be a more appropriate term. Somebody had coined this, which would mean the storytelling animal, because I think that is what differentiates us from all other species. If you think about it, your day start when you get up in the morning. The first thing you think about is, okay, what am I going to be doing through the day? That is a form of storytelling. And when you go to bed at night, you dream, and that's another form of storytelling. And everything in between, when you're late for work and you're making up an excuse, that excuse is a story. When you're gossiping at the coffee dispenser at office, that's storytelling. So everything, and of course, a book and a web series and a movie are, of course, we know, we define those as storytelling, but actually everything else, or when you've been asked to work on the weekend and you're cursing your boss and thinking of all the horrible things you're going to do to her or him, that's also storytelling. So really, we live in a storm of stories.
We are stories.
We are stories. And, in that context, I always feel that if we are a part of stories, we should, there's this, I suppose it's a Gen Z term, which is main character energy, right? So, they talk about having main character energy. And I genuinely believe that it's better to be a main character in your own story rather than an extra in somebody else's. So,
or a sidekick.
Yeah, sidekick. So that's what I believe that we should all strive. I mean, if there's a young person watching this, that would be my advice. Be the main character in your story, and to do that, of course, you have to work towards it. It doesn't just happen automatically, but in the long run, obviously, you would want to be the main character of a story rather than a secondary or tertiary
character. Write your own script
character.
as a heroine or a hero, right?
Yes.
But, in fact, I just wanted to ask you, and you must have probably experienced this as well. What do you take more to heart? A client rejecting a campaign that you've conceptualized, and burned the midnight oil on you and your team, or somebody actually poking at your grammar?
So I think that when you're working in an advertising agency, rejection is
part and parcel. Huh?
Part and parcel. But at the same time, I would think it's the hardest thing to handle. You get more thick-skinned as you sort of get more senior. But the reality is, because generally you work, especially if it's a new business pitch, or even if it's presenting the new next season's campaign to your existing client, and you worked for days and nights, and especially the last night, you're burning not just the midnight oil but the oil all night long, and perfecting everything, and you're so excited about it, and you go into that meeting, and sometimes they don't even let you finish. It's like, and there's this, I always say, there's this Hindi phrase, maza nahi aaya. And when I left advertising as a full-time career, this was the thing that I was most happy about, that I wouldn't have to hear that. And that's what now I'm very selective about taking on advertising work, because I want to be sure that I don't want to be in that scene, because I really have lost my patience for it. Because have the respect for the storyteller, the brand, the people who are working on your brand, to analyze what it is that you feel that is lacking or wrong in the campaign that's being presented to you, because then there is a way forward. If you just say maza nahi aaya, kuch aur dikhao, then it's just like, okay, randomly generate more. Of course, today we're talking about AI, so that's one advantage of AI. AI actually allows you to generate many many options, and then your job as a creative person becomes more to do with your judgment and your curation. So yeah,
Curation, curiosity as well.
curiosity. And on the other side, yeah, it does, because I've become known as the English nut. So if people correct my grammar, then it is a bit of a jolt. And sometimes when they correct it, it's actually a genuine mistake. But there are many, like on my English nut social media channels, I have people telling me, "Oh, you mispronounced that word." Or this actually means this, and they may be only aware of one particular meaning of a word or one way of pronouncing it, and they don't know that even if you go to the Oxford Dictionary, which is in a way the Bible, you will find there are multiple ways of saying the same thing. So to give you an example, and this is something that I find that certain things start becoming common in a particular place. So in India, for some reason, the pronunciation of the word poem has now everybody's saying poem, because in American English they say poem, but in British English it's poem. It always has been, and it still is. And in India, we have
The E is still getting pride of place, right?
yes, and we've always followed British English in
Right.
India, but there are teachers now who are teaching it as poem. So I have lots of people like either correcting me or telling me which one is the correct pronunciation. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of misconceptions around. And of course, then there are a lot of people who say, listen, pronunciation is subjective,
Right.
and things like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's all a part of, I think that when you are on a social media platform in particular, then of course you have all sorts of opinions. And yes, there are times when I also learn something new. It's not that I know everything. And by the way, when I create my content for my social media I do a lot of research on it. And also, the what we were talking about, pronunciation, I actually go back and double check a lot of the words for pronunciation, also because I did a large part of my higher education in the United States, and there the pronunciation is very different for certain words. So, and at times I've not been aware that I'm using like for example, Americans would say genre, whereas it's genre if you talk about it in British English. So you should be conscious. I mean, finally you choose which one you want to use, but one should be aware of what is pronounced in a particular way in North America versus the rest of the world in which we live.
Sumanto, you spoke about curiosity, conceptualization, curation, etc., etc., and you've been there, done that literally. Do you see in the current context, there is some kind of an ambiguity? The lines are being blurred between metric and meaning in the advertising world. Have we actually replaced that beautiful chef's handmade recipe for an a la carte, or for a buffet? In the sense, do you sense that happening?
Yes, I do, because I think particularly in the short run, it's very easy for advertising in today's tech and data driven world, and increasingly AI dependent. It's very easy to achieve certain metrics, and where without a big idea in it, you might do a social media campaign which is has a very cliche you know, dance challenge or whatever it is, and it'll deliver your numbers. Um, but I feel that in the long run, I mean, if you want to make a deeper connection as a brand with your consumers, then you have to look for meaning and look to create meaning, and even at a cost. I mean, you stand for something, and that's why certain people will be attracted to you and maybe others will not. But I think creating that meaning is very important, and that is getting lost in this
Chase for
mechanized.
metrics.
Yeah, and it's, you know, sort of everything is getting mechanized and everything is about numbers, and metrics are great, but I feel metrics don't change, uh, they don't impact culture, and they don't change human behavior, and uh, they don't reach your heart. So I think that and this has always been true in advertising. You know, it's always about for especially for clients to deliver results in that quarter. So very often the, you know, metrics are very good to measure metrics, and you know, it's the same thing, measurement. But if you are measuring the short term success of something, yes, you have been very successful in the short term, but have you built the brand long term? Have you created uh, a relationship? You know, I'd seen this uh, comment by a planner, an advertising planner. I'm forgetting the. I think he was talking about the Aston Martin uh, brand, and he said, you know, I'd seen this wonderful Aston Martin ad, because of which I ended up the buying one. And he said the twist is that I saw that ad when I was a teenager, and now I'm in my 40s. So you know, that really brings
So
home
beautiful. Yeah.
the, you know, the power of making that genuine emotional connection, and not just, you know, having great metrics.
It's some quarterly numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's a good way to segue into my next question, Sumanto. You mentioned about AI, you mentioned about all these large language models and technology and data analytics and algorithms and all of that. Not that one is actually forbearing it, but do you think what could be the last frontier or the bastion that human beings will have in terms of a creative articulation?
So I think, of course, anything that we say and predict today, people
Might become obsolete by evening also.
Yeah,
That also
yes,
is true.
people list. I was going to say listening to this 5 years from now, but even, yeah, day after tomorrow might say, you know. But in, you know, I myself have said in the past that you know, the genuine human creativity and empathy is something that AI and LLMs cannot replace. But I think increasingly we are seeing that in certain cases, uh, it's mimicking it in to such an extent that it's as well as
Yeah.
having that kind of a thing. So I think that ultimately uh, the last bastion for advertising or creative directors like myself is it's our human judgment. You know, is it because that cultural lived experience, you know, or and also a moral responsibility that we have. I think that AI is already very good and will become increasingly brilliant at giving you statistically successful results or solutions. But that deeper meaning that we are seeking to create, and the deeper bond with consumers for a brand, uh, which carries the moral responsibility, which reflects the stance or the purpose of that brand. I think that's where uh, I would say that as a creative director in the past, if I had a large team of people who were brainstorming, and my job was to select the best ideas from that and then help build on that. Today, I would see my job as, because AI can give you infinite variations and iterations of an idea, but to select the one that genuinely works for that brand and carries that deeper meaning and that moral responsibility that is so important, that judgment which is so important. I think that is where, at least from where we are today in terms of what AI can do, that is still a very important role. It's a shrinking role because you certainly don't need the people. We used to say, the hands and legs of a team. They may not be the most brilliant creative people themselves. They
The
can't
foot soldiers and
the
all those
foot
things.
soldiers, but they could generate a lot of ideas, first level ideas at least, which you could then refine. I think that will slowly disappear. So it will be the creative director. It will be about AI governance also, because there are legal, I keep talking about moral responsibility. There's also the legal
Exactly.
aspect. So all of that, and, brand models, because I think increasingly that's what people are focusing on in advertising today, is that you're to create within that AI a brand model, so that brand model knows that, this is the language that's right for this brand.
Yeah.
So, but of course, then as that becomes more sophisticated, then once again the creative director's role reduces further. But yeah, so in the foreseeable future, that is what we are going to be doing, is that we're going to be using our judgment and that curation that we've always been doing, but with the AI rather than with the human uh, team members. The AI is like, the junior team that you had at one time.
Right. That gives me a trigger to come to my next one, Sumanto. You spoke about judgment, you spoke about evaluation. Do you think, I'm not painting everyone with the same brush, certainly not. Brands and some of the advertising that they do belittle the intelligence of the common person or the audience, and you might want to, juxtapose that with your campaign that you did for The Economist,
Yeah.
wherein you actually made the audience the hero. The audience was assumed that you're super intelligent, you're cerebral, you will understand my communication. That's why you're a leader of Economist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to kind of just
Yeah,
tell me
sure.
your thoughts?
So I think, yeah. So specifically talking about The Economist, uh, of course that was a brand that is a brand that is a little different from your usual mass brand, because you are talking to a highly educated. I mean, our target audience was CEOs. So usually clients tell you to dumb down your campaign,
Yeah.
so that the lowest common denominator can also vibe with it. But in this case, we were briefed to create something that challenges the consumer, because somebody who is a CEO would prefer to be challenged, or would be much more stimulated by something that challenges him or her, rather than something that is absolutely simplified and spoon fed to them. So that was a refreshingly different brief that came to us. And this is like, more than 15 years ago that we did this campaign. I mean, we worked on this brand for a few years. That this one particular campaign was this Interpret the World, where we did these outdoor, these hoardings, where there were these three mysteriously, seemingly unrelated pictures, and in they were simplified visuals in red and white, because the Economist brand colors. So, for example, one of them showed, and it was always one. It was a picture within a picture within a picture. So the innermost picture was a pig, then which was in a TV set, which was in a suitcase, and below there was a line that said "Interpret the World," and then there was a number to which you could send an SMS. So this is smartphones were not big at that point in time, so it was quite novel at that point in time to use this kind of interactive technology. So basically, if you had to try to guess what is the connection, and you could send in an SMS to this number to get the correct answer, and it led to a lot of argument, discussion, so which was nice, because
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
brand got talked about a lot. And of course, the example that I gave you, the story was that it was about swine flu, and there was a lot of TV reportage on the swine flu, which led to a huge reduction in tourism and travel. So therefore, the pig, the swine, the TV set, and the
And the
suitcase.
suitcase.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
there was another one which was um, a factory outline of a factory inside a bowl um, with chopsticks um, inside a whale. So this related to something that was in the news at that time, which was that. I mean, of course, it talked about earlier times. It was the fact that the industrial revolution in Japan led to a huge increase in demand for food, which led to an increase in whale hunting because that was one way of feeding all these extra mouths. So yeah, so and the premise was that if you are an economist reader, these are things that you've read about in the magazine, and so you would be able to interpret the world, and that's what the publication helps you do. So yes, so this was a very different campaign where we made it a challenge and it worked brilliantly. And very often it's absolutely the opposite. Whatever you kind of present to the client, they'll say, no, but I will the target audience be able to understand. So there is this belittling of the target audience. And the reality is that if you, the research methods which are used where you play an ad for a group of people and you get their responses, get their interpretations, but I don't know if that's always the, because I think people react very differently when they are uh,
In
they
a formal situation,
in a
right?
form where they're being asked to
They
sort
want to
of,
always come across as nice and correct and
yeah,
quality.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what they say about how they're going to react to it, what they say about how they're going to react to an ad versus how they actually subconsciously react to it are two different things. So yes, and again, it's about going back to those short-term results, quarterly results, but because I think that sometimes something which is a little more challenging may take longer to have its impact, but it'll have a deeper impact. But if you don't have the patience, so it comes back to patience as a brand owner, as a brand custodian. Do you have the patience to play the longer game, or is it that everybody's boss is going to be looking at what did you deliver this quarter? So and what I often found was that people on the brands would move off it within a year or two, so they wanted to make that impact in the few quarters that they had on that brand. So therefore it was not conducive to longer term thinking. Of course there are, I mean, one of the brands that I've worked on is Dove, and Dove is a brand which has really taken the trouble to define itself in a particular way and to stand for something real beauty. It's been talking about the campaign for real beauty now for many years, and it's more to do with working on the self-esteem of young girls and women, because the world, including beauty advertising, had created these absolutely unattainable beauty standards to the point there's one campaign that Dove did where it showed that where the research showed, first of all, that only 2% of women considered themselves beautiful. And they did a campaign where there were two drawings done of them by art of different women. One was uh, based on how the woman described herself or saw herself, and other one was based on artist truly saw them. And there was a big difference, and these women later were shown both the pictures, and you see the women crying because it was such a emotional experience for them to see that there is a beauty in them which may not always be the conventional media driven idea of beauty. Or young girls who are, and now with these TikTok filters, so they did a lovely campaign which was called Turn Your Back, which was basically, there was a TikTok filter which made everybody look super glamorous. And it was so sophisticated that if you're moving around, and it actually showed, I mean, I've never, we don't have TikTok here, but I've, in that campaign, they showed how a woman is looking so glamorous, and then they show what she looks like. I mean, she's attractive in her own way, but she looks like a supermodel in the. And what Dove said was turn your back. Like, so literally they told, and even in the Oscars, there were a couple of actresses who turned their back to this app. So, so this is a beauty brand which is telling you to turn your back on these impossible standards that the media kind of creates for you. So I think that sometimes brands do things like this, which therefore allow for a long-term vision and allow you to create properties which are going to be relevant even 10 years from. I mean, maybe the expressions will change. You didn't have TikTok filters till a few years ago, so the campaign about TikTok filters happened then. But before that, and in the Indian context, we've had especially in this whole arranged marriage concept. I don't know if you've seen this particular Dove ad where it's girls who are going to be meeting prospective girls who are going to be meeting prospective boys and the parents, and there are always comments about, oh, you know you're too short, or your hair is too curly, or you're too dark, or things like that. And and it shows, and these were based on true stories, and it showed the discomfort of the women, and the brand tells you, don't subscribe to this. You're beautiful in your own way. So I think that messages like this are so important, particularly from a brand that talks about beauty, where almost all other beauty brands are telling you, no, you have to be this perfect beauty, and everything is airbrushed. In fact, this whole campaign or this movement from Dove started with uh, an ad called Dove Evolution in the early 2000s, where it starts with a woman who sits down at a makeup table, and then the makeup and hair person are working, and it's speeded up. So you see you see her transforming in front of your eyes, and then once the hair and makeup is done, you actually see the photoshopping that is happening, and then finally she appears on the hoarding. And it says that no wonder perceptions of beauty are so distorted.
Right.
So actually, it's a ad campaign calling out ad campaigns and the negative effect. So yes, this was a long-term game, and it was a big risk, but it has paid
How
huge
it
dividends.
worked for the brand, isn't
It's
it?
worked
Brilliant.
brilliantly, but somebody had to take that risk and say, yes, we will do this and we will stick to this. Because I remember, because I worked on this brand when Dove first came to India, because thinking in India was not as evolved as it was in the West. So this campaign was more readily accepted in the West. In India, we were still saying, no, but if you don't airbrush the faces, and if you don't show fair skin in a beauty ad, then people are not going to buy. But slowly and surely, we did work on making it about real beauty.
It's so much about drip, 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 and the conviction behind
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
Well done to you on all that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to my credit.
Yeah,
it's,
of course.
It's
I
to
know
the.
yeah.
I mean, I think that a lot of successful advertising, it's a partnership with the
Brand,
client,
yeah.
and I think the brand owner, the client, if they have a vision, that's the best possible scenario.
You're
Because
so
then,
empowered then.
yes, because I mean, another brand that I worked on was Star Plus, and we had a wonderful client over there, and who had a vision to do great things. Whether we came up with this campaign called Nai Soch, where it was about the fact that this was around 2016 and 17. The fact that women can achieve just as much as men or more if given a level playing field. And so basically about gender equality and about being allies. So one of the films we'd created was with Amir Khan, and he's a owner of a sweet shop. And it starts with a customer, and the sweet shop is very busy. There's all sort of activities happening, sweets being packed, and Amir Khan is the shopkeeper, and this customer say that your business is thriving, you're doing so well, and he says that it's all the children. It's the children. They're the ones who are doing it. He said, oh, your sons must be very smart. So he said, not sons, daughters. And that's when you reveal that his two daughters, they've started the online business. And then when the customer is leaving the store, in the beginning, you'd seen that there was some work happening on the signage. And when he leaves, he sees that it's Gurdeep Singh and daughters, because we never see that, right? It's always so and so and sons. So the idea was to make people think about the fact that how. I think advertising has played a role in perpetuating many negative stereotypes. So it can also play a wonderful role in breaking them and creating new ideals. So
That's so well articulated.
this was
so
an
very well
example of that.
articulated,
Yeah.
So as a creative leader, Sumanto, and those are wonderful examples, I think, and each of them could be big case studies by themselves, right?
Yeah.
Whether it is an Access or Dow or
Yeah.
all of Star Plus and all of that. As a creative leader, what do you fear most? A bad idea, a safe idea, or sorry, I'm going to the usual suspect, and the client saying, let's look at what the competition is doing.
Yeah, so I think that the third option you gave is the most scary, because I think that that kind of encapsulates the other two, because when you are benchmarking against what the market or what your competitors are doing, what happens is basically you realize that the client is not comfortable, first of all, with something new, because it's only when it's something that they've seen before.
There is a point of reference must be
then
there.
then they okay, this is making sense to me. The other thing is that then you lose your unique voice as a brand, because you're benchmarking against what other brands are doing. So yeah, so I think that's so before safe idea or bad idea, this is the first filter, which therefore makes sure that you can't have a great idea or a breakthrough idea, because you're benchmarking against what others are doing. Yeah.
Just to extend that thought about being safe, do you think brand, the purpose has become more of a poster than a promise?
Yeah, I think that I'm hoping that we're sort of coming to the end of that whole purpose-driven advertising cycle, because I think it reached its peak a few years ago, where every brand was. I think it's great if you genuinely have a purpose, but if your purpose is there only to help you sell products, and it's there for maybe for one advertising season, and it's not genuine. See, today actually that cannot survive, because of the internet and social media and all of that. Every news travels in seconds, and people can figure out if it's BS, if your purpose is BS. I remember quite a few years ago, Nike women got into some hot water, because I think they discontinued a contract with one of their female athletes because she was pregnant. And on the other hand, they were talking about women's upliftment in a certain way in their other advertising. So they got heavily criticized for this. So today you have to genuinely live your purpose, not just in terms of what the brand stands for in the advertising space, but what you do within your own company. For example, if you're talking about women's empowerment in your ads, and you treat women badly in your company, if they're paid less than your male employees, for example, then that's going to come and bite you in the behind. So I think that just it's practical and prudent today for a brand that if they have a purpose, then they better not only have it on the poster, but make sure that it percolates through everything that they do.
So true. Just extending that narrative arc, Sumanto, of brands wanting to play it safe, and of course the fabled the cons, right, that we speak about. Do you think a lot of the work is being made for juries than for humans?
So I think there is some truth to that, and I would say as a young creative person, I was very motivated to win awards at Cannes, because it was so exciting to get that recognition. and to go to Cannes and be able to walk on stage. I mean, it was a dream, and it was a dream that did come true for me a couple of times. And what I've said in the past is that even if you are creating something because you want glory, you want a trophy, but make sure that it serves the purpose that uh, it's being created for. If you're doing for example, one of the Khan Awards that I won was on a campaign that we did for the government of India on filaria elephantiasis awareness, and it was these big footprints. That was the ad. These little boys in the village, they're playing and they come across this giant footprint, and finally these footprints lead to the community center, and there's a man who has this disease, and he said that I want to bring awareness to the fact, and he's there with his family, and he said that you can lead a normal life, but don't try to hide this. And when there are these volunteers who come and they give you the medicine, the preventative medicine, take it, because this is what can happen otherwise. That won an award, but it also served a purpose. And of course, that was something that was commissioned by an organization. Even if, I mean, I have, for example, many years ago, I created a campaign on adoption. This is when adoption was taboo in India. I mean, it was actually frightening. People who adopted actually lied about it. They faked a pregnancy, and the woman went to another town so that the family could say that this was a child who was born biologically. So, and I had this idea for a campaign, and I actually went and I found an NGO, and I said, I have this idea, and they loved it, and then we did it. Of course, there wasn't much media behind it because they didn't have a budget. So whatever free media we could get through our media, those days we had our own media department, so we did that. It won awards, and which I was very excited about, but at the same time I feel that in its own small way it did change attitudes. In fact, I was so gratified quite a few years later. There was a journalist who I had occasionally spoken to or given quotes to over the phone. And one day I think she was based in Bangalore. And she said, I'd like to meet you in person. I said, what is it regarding? She said, no, let me meet you. And then she told me, she said that, she'd seen my campaign and that had prompted her to adopt a child. So, I mean, I was so moved by that. So I think that is you should always have that in mind. I was mentoring a team in Sri Lanka, Ogilvy Sri Lanka, and Geometry Global Sri Lanka a couple of years ago, and I seem to love working on social causes like this. I mean, I don't know, maybe it just comes naturally to me. It's not always that I've done it because I want to win an award. So I had done a couple of campaigns in Sri Lanka for the Blind Federation over there. And then there was this team who came up with a thought of something that they wanted to do. And they thought of me because they saw that I had, in like 10 years ago or earlier, I had worked on these campaigns, and they contacted me and said, we'd like you to mentor us. So the first thing that I told them was that, I mean, even if you have these dreams about winning an award, make this a genuine, and it was a brilliant idea. It was for ProMate, which is a brand of notebooks in Sri Lanka. And their idea was simple, that, if you use Braille, you can use a used notebook, because Braille, it's all about feeling those raised dots.
Yeah.
And that there's been a lot of unrest and economic and political turmoil in Sri Lanka. So there was no paper available at one point in time. And for the poorer students of blind schools, they didn't even have paper. They had to use like scraps of paper. So this was a simple exercise, which was to collect used notebooks and donate it to the schools, so that these students, the blind students, had enough proper paper. And it didn't matter to them that something is already written on it, because they can't read that. So such a simple and brilliant idea. And I said, you've got to give this scale. And of course, Sri Lanka is a much smaller country. I think it's 22 million people. So, which is like the greater Bombay area.
Yeah.
But so they did this campaign where, we did a campaign on social media, which reached, I think, almost everybody who's on social media. So, and, they collected far, far more notebooks than was required. In fact, there was talks about then sending these to other countries, other developing countries who might need them for the same purpose. And of course, this campaign won a lot of awards for the team. But I think that's starting point of saying that, whether you want glory or not, and it's true that creative people do want glory because they work very, very hard, and at times they have to compromise on certain campaigns in their day-to-day work because the really creative approach that they want to take is not approved by the client. So I think this is a great creative outlet for them, and which can also serve a purpose of bringing positive change in the world if you approach it with that mindset. There are also a lot of fake campaigns which nobody ever saw, which only the award juries saw. But now I think increasingly I know that at Cannes and elsewhere, they go into this. They try to verify whether a campaign is genuine or not before they award it. So you need to have some kind of effectiveness numbers to back up your campaign before it can win an award. So yes, you have to combine that the purpose, the true purpose of that campaign with the glory that you want from it.
And the best of both worlds is ideally that.
Right. Yeah.
As a mathematician, and this is a personal curiosity as well, as a mathematician, how much has it helped you in terms of storytelling? Because I've heard instances of people who play the music, they learn to any string instrument or keyboard or whatever it is. They're extremely good at mathematics, calculus, algebra, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Okay, what has been your experience?
So what you're saying is so true that we talk about the Fibonacci sequence, right, in mathematics, where two numbers that add up to the next number, and that creates a sequence. So when you play Indian classical music, actually it's a practical application of the Fibonacci sequence, and it's named after Fibonacci, but actually it sort of originated in India and was used in classical music in India. So I think that there is a mathematics, in mathematics we talk about elegant solutions, because you can, there are many inelegant solutions also, but they serve the purpose, but it's the elegant solution that mathematicians look for, and that's the one that becomes the one that survives long term. So I think that in creativity also we can talk about coming up with the elegant solution. And in terms of training of the mind, I think it has its pros and cons, honestly, because the con of it is that you can tend to be a little too left brain in terms of before you've let your right brain really sort of let loose and be absolutely creative. If your left brain is always kind of analyzing, then that can come in the way. But on the other hand, if you allow the both halves, the two halves, to work in tandem in the proper way, then I think it's the ideal situation. And so I think that training as a mathematician, my love for language and expression, if I'm able to balance these two things, then I think I would. And I think if I've had a moderately successful advertising career, clearly both of these things have played their roles in it.
Wonderful. That's a brilliant example for a lot of people. And I see a lot of these progressive universities and institutions offering a combination. You can take a major of this and a minor of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of this is stemming from this kind of inspiration.
Absolutely. So because I did my higher education in the US and Canada, and my undergraduate college, which was called Berea College, it was a liberal arts institution in Kentucky. And it was a fascinating place. And it's exactly as you said, we had a language requirement. So I took Spanish, for example, and I developed this love for that language, which has lasted me, a lifetime. I studied mathematics, I studied economics, but I also studied history and sociology and religion. And so, it really, their aim is to turn you into a well rounded person. And I think that, yes, specialization is important, but I think we also need to be products of a liberal arts education in that sense.
Yeah, I think we need to go beyond the STEM and bring in sociology, anthropology, history, culture into the mix.
And that was, what colleges like mine, that's what they aim to do. And yeah, of course, it was also a work study program. Every student there had to work on campus. So, I worked there was a hotel on campus. So my first job was as a waiter. And then I did so many. I was a tour guide, and of course I was a teaching assistant for mathematics, but that would be an obvious one. But yeah, like I said, a tour guide. I worked as a model in the art department. So
that is what actually kind of leapfrogged you into the acting bug.
Yeah, maybe. I was a person who didn't get too many acting opportunities in school or college. In school, I think I did one play which I wrote myself. And in college, unfortunately, I think, though it was a liberal arts college, they were not liberal enough at that point in time. I think things have changed a lot since I went to college in the US. But this thing of casting somebody who's not from the ethnicity of your character or doesn't have the same accent. So the fact that I didn't speak with an American accent would itself have been something that. So I did audition for, and I remember I auditioned for quote unquote white play. I didn't get the part. Then I tried auditioning for black characters in plays, and that didn't work either. So of course, maybe it was just the fact that I couldn't act, but.
Sumanto, I wanted to ask you about the book. Firstly, congratulations again on the book.
Thank you.
What is a trigger point? Everybody has it, right? The Archimedes moment, the Eureka moment. Now I must write a book or whatever it is. What is yours?
So first of all, my situation is quite different from most other writers or would-be writers that I talk to, because
that's a very subtle way of planting your USP. Yeah? Well said. Once an ad man, always an ad man.
No, because the thing is that the publisher approached me to write the book because of my social media avatar, the English nut. So, because where I create content about the English language, and having seen that one of the editors at Rupa Publishers approached me to write, since one of the topics that I often deal with is etymology. So they said, we feel there's a space for an Indian book on English etymology. So that's how the book came to be, honestly speaking. And for me, it was really an extension of, because I keep researching topics related to English, particularly to etymology, for my channel. So writing the book, and the thing is that, people ask me, will you write a novel? That's a very different thing, because in a novel, you can't you can't write a few pages and take a long break, because you'll completely lose your train of thought. Whereas in this book, there are individual short chapters about the origin story of a word or a phrase. So, I can finish one, and then I can take even a month's break and write the next chapter. It wouldn't matter. And that's exactly because I wrote this book while I was in a very, very, frenzied job. So there were often times when I couldn't work on it for weeks. So yeah, so that's how the book started. And so I think the Eureka moment came for me when I started the channel, The English Nut, because and that's quite interesting. That started in 2019 January. It was my New Year's resolution. As the previous year was coming to a close, I said I'm going to launch this channel, and if I'm going to stick with it for a year. And if it takes off, then it takes off. Otherwise, but I'll stick with it for a year, no matter what. And I started on Facebook, and this was the time when everybody was talking about the fact that video is the next big thing. And since I've always been interested in acting, and I've been interested in language, so acting also by extension being in front of the camera. In fact, some of my videos have mini skits in them as well, though most of it is just me talking, but also there are mini skits. And of course, the English language, the ability to script an episode, that also, because of my advertising work. So all of this came together, and also this frustration of, I talk about this maza nahi aaya syndrome, where you get so frustrated about your creative work.
I'm going to use this liberally.
Yeah, please do. Your creative work not being approved. So I said, for the English Nut, I am the client and I'm also the creative person. So there was an ideal situation for me. So yeah, it's with these kind of thoughts that and also, we were working on social media and digital campaigns for our clients. And I always call myself a digital dinosaur. I'm not a digital native. So to be able to really understand the nuts and bolts of how
it needed an English nut.
It needed an English nut, exactly. Otherwise, I would have had to bolt from this business.
Good, cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Lovely. Oh, thank you. I think it's a great sweet spot to come to this end of the well-rounded conversation that we're having with Sumanto. Before we conclude, we do what is a mandatory practice, whether the other side likes it or not.
Okay.
As a lightning round question, where I'm also, thanks to my technical team and crew, allowed to look at the paper because I can't remember things always. All right.
So you're allowed to look at the paper, but I'm not. That's what you're saying.
If you have a paper, please feel free.
I don't have a paper.
One word killing most advertising today.
Phrase, maza nahi aaya.
Good one. I wanted a reinforcement. One brand that truly understands the human art.
One brand that truly understands the human art. The human heart.
Heart.
Dove.
That is real beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah. The most dangerous phrase in a client meeting? I know you are tempted to repeat the first answer.
Let's huddle and get back to you.
Okay. Let's circle back to you.
Circle back to you.
A campaign you wish you had made.
The International Economist campaign.
International Economist.
Yeah.
One brutally honest sentence for every young creative walking into branding or advertising.
It's not glamorous.
It's very well said. That's very well said. So in closing, Sumanto, all of us have to depart in one form or the other, one day or the other, right? Sorry, I don't mean to sound morbid. Okay. But 50 years from now, 40 years from now, 100 years, whatever it is, what would you want to be known as? And if somebody wants to take up the responsibility of writing something on your tombstone, metaphorically speaking, what would you want to be known as, remembered as?
Somebody who told the truth memorably.
Beautiful. That's so succinctly put. I think you have a word of simplifying the most profound things, Sumanto. Excellent conversation. Very, very candid, very, very freewheeling, very, very insightful, and very, very authentic. Thank you so much for doing this with us. Thank you for doing it for SOHB Story.
It's been a pleasure.
Same here.
I enjoyed it was free flowing from both sides. That's why I think it worked.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.